This video is about long-run growth, productivity, and the Rule of 72. As a means of comparing countries across space and time, the measurement of real GDP per capita is used to demonstrate what we call long-run growth. Productivity is the key to long-run growth. The Rule of 72 can be used to demonstrate how many years it takes an economy's real GDP per capita to double. Comparing economies across time and space. Economic growth is shown in the United States, India, and China over the past century for each of the three countries. Equal percent changes in real GDP per capita are drawn the same size. India and China currently have a much higher growth rate than the United States. However, China has only just attained the standard of living achieved in the United States in 1900, while India is still poorer than the United States was in 1900. The source of this data is Angus Maddison, Statistics on World Population, GDP, and Per Capita GDP from the year 1 through 26 AD, available at www.ggdc.net, and the International Monetary Fund. Comparing incomes around the world, although the countries of Europe and North America, along with a few in the Pacific, have high incomes, much of the world is still very poor. Today, more than 50% of the world's population lives in countries with a lower standard of living than the United States had a century ago. The information on incomes around the world comes from the International Monetary Fund. How did the United States manage to produce more than 7 times more per person in 2010 than in 1900? The answer is a little bit at a time. Long-run growth is normally a gradual process in which real GDP per capita grows at most a few percent per year. From 1900 to 1910, real GDP per capita in the United States increased an average of 1.9% each year. The Rule of 70 tells us how long it takes real GDP per capita, or any other variable that grows gradually over time, to double. The number of years for a variable to double is equal to 70 divided by the annual growth rate of the variable. When a country's growth rate is 2% per year, the country's real GDP per capita will double in 70 divided by 2, or 35 years. Note that we do not change 2% to 0.02% and then divide. We use 2 as a whole number in the equation. 70 divided by 2 equals 35. A cross-country comparison of growth rate shows China growing at about 9% per year between 1980 and 2010, India growing about half that at 4.2%, Ireland at 3.1%, the United States at about 1.7%, France at 1.3%, Argentina at 1.2%, and Zimbabwe's economy shrinking or decreasing by 5% per year. Sources of long-run growth include labor productivity, physical capital, human capital, and technology. Labor productivity is often referred to simply as productivity or output per worker. Physical capital refers to the human-made resources such as buildings and machines. Human capital is the improvement in labor created by the education and knowledge embodied in the workforce, while technology is the technological means for the production of goods and services such as robotics or computerization. The aggregate production function is used to account for aggregate growth. It's a means of specifying the equation for which the economy grows. The aggregate production function is a hypothetical function that shows how productivity, or real GDP per worker, depends on the quantities of physical capital per worker and human capital per worker, as well as the state of technology. The aggregate production function, Y over L, where Y is output and L is labor, is equal to a function of physical capital per worker, or K over L, human capital per worker, or H over L, and technology, or T. A recent example of aggregate production function applied to real data comes from a comparative study of Chinese and Indian economic growth by the economists Barry Bosworth and Susan Collins for the Brookings Institute. They used the following aggregate production function. GDP per worker is equal to T times physical capital per worker raised to 0.4 power times human capital per worker raised to 0.6 power. To specify the amount of growth in an economy. Using this function, they tried to explain why China grew faster than India between 1978 and 2004. About half the difference was due to China's higher levels of investment spending, which raised the level of physical capital per worker faster than India's. The other half was due to faster Chinese technological progress. This video explained long-run growth as measurement of real GDP per capita, productivity as the key to long-run growth, and the use of the Rule of 70 in explaining the number of years it takes a variable to double.